Howdy, howdy, and welcome back. It's yet another Workshop Wednesday. This time, it is a Beyond. If you've heard a lot about this, there's a ton of buzz about this right now. So we're going to do an introduction for you so you can learn all the ins and outs of the basics of server side. Before we get too far into this, welcome. If this is your first Workshop Wednesday, my name is Chris Mercer, but everybody calls me Mercer. You should as well. I'm the co-founder of MeasurementMarketing.io, and whether you found us through the podcast and talks that we give, maybe through some of the information that we've shared with other platforms like CXL Institute or Digital Marketer, Social Media Examiner, or even Measure Summit, maybe you're already a member over at MeasurementMarketing.io, whether a free Toolbox member or a flagship Measurement Marketing Academy member. However you found us, we are happy that you're here. It's our job to help people like you learn how to use all these fun tools like Tag Manager, like Google Analytics. And of course, today we're going to be talking about server-side Tag Manager. Now, we are going to cover the framework. We do this each and every training. Just make sure the trainings go in context. Remember, as a measurement marketer, you've got to plan, build, and act. That's really it. These 3 steps. Why? Because we start marketing in the blind. What we're trying to do is we're trying to get to the point where our marketing is predictably growing revenue and profits. Now, how do we do that? We plan, we build, and then we act. How do you plan? First, all about asking the right questions. Then you gather the information to make sure that you can answer those questions. Then you role play. You actually think about what actions you're going to take based upon the answers you get. That's the measurement planning process. Then you move into the build. The build out phase, well, that essentially is where you are sitting there saying, okay, what's working and what's not? When it comes to traffic, I need to be able to define my who, what, and why. I need to be able to tie that traffic to results, actually measure that and figure out what the results are that I need to get. And we need to figure out the actual story. We need to be able to stitch these things together in a story. That's the structure. Once we have the build done, then we can actually start acting on everything. That's where we first read the reports. Then when we got our benchmarks, we start to forecast based upon those benchmarks. Ultimately, we then optimize because we're going to measure against our forecast. That's going to tell us what's working and what's not. That's the optimization phase. And when we've got all of that together, we can finally start predictably growing revenue and results. That's the measurement marketing framework in a nutshell. Now, with all of our trainings, all these workshops, remember, it's just one thing that we're focusing on. One new thing, one new way of looking at something, one new thing you picked up. And there's going to be a lot of them, I think, in this particular training. We're, of course, talking about server side. So let's go ahead and get started, shall we? Beyond Basics, GTM Server Side, an introduction. Now, normally I just jump right in, but this time we have a guest instructor, so I want to make sure. Now, obviously, I think he needs no introduction. Hopefully, you are already familiar with this gentleman. His name is Julian. He's the creator of MeasureSchool.com. Absolutely cannot recommend MeasureSchool.com enough. You've hopefully already come across him on the MeasureSchool YouTube channel. He's all about data, his whole tagline, the data-driven way of digital marketing. That's what MeasureSchool is all about. He runs a program over at MeasureSchool.com called Measure Masters, is where his trainings are. And he is also our partner with Measure Summit 2021. We won Measure Summit together. And I have to tell you, I know he knows this because I tell him all the time, you know, as a measurement, as somebody who measurement myself, who helps people such as yourself to learn this sort of stuff, I always stand on the shoulders of giants. And Julian is one of the giants in the industry for me. He is a personal mentor. I've learned so much from him. I hope that you have already as well. And together, you and I are both going to learn even more from Julian. So without further ado, and I have to say, mental note on Julian's YouTube channel, over 130,000 subscribers, over 8 million views. He's been doing this for a while. I was so jealous when I saw that. But man, just absolutely fantastic at helping out the community. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and move on here. We're going to let Julian share his screen and get underway. So with that, I'll let you take it away, Julian.
Thanks, Mercer, for the introduction. Hello, everyone, and welcome to my little presentation. My name is Julian. I want to talk today about Google Tag Manager Server Side and let you know about the why, what, when, how of Google Tag Manager Server Side. And yeah, I'm really excited about this because it is kind of a shift inside of how we do tracking and tagging on our website. So let's dive right in. So what is Google Tag Manager Server Side all about? Well, before we talk about server side, we need to talk about client side, because what happens when you put in a URL in a browser, it sends over a request to a server where there's software running like WordPress that generates then a HTML document that gets sent back to your browser. And on that browser, it gets then interpreted with all the HTML, CSS, and makes up the website itself. Now, what interests us as somebody who uses Google Tag Manager is like our tracking codes itself are installed in Google Tag Manager, and they get executed on the browser. So the JavaScript that is on the browser then sends over requests to Facebook, to your Google Analytics, to your Google Ads feasibly, or to all your other marketing vendors. And this gets actually downloaded. There is the container of Google Tag Manager gets downloaded and then sent over data to your different tools. And this all happens on the client side or the browser of the user. So each and every time a request is generated, this happens on the user's browser. And therefore, there needs to be a connection between your user's browser and the marketing vendors. And this has been a little bit under scrutiny lately, or for the past few years, because we have regulations now that we have to get consent for some tools to send over that data. We also are under scrutiny by the browser vendors to get rid of third-party cookies and how cookies are actually set and how users are identified. But we also have, for a long time already, ad blockers that might prevent our JavaScript from executing. And they mainly look into, hey, is this browser or this website trying to send data over to Facebook? Let's block this. And therefore, this whole model of client-side tracking is, I wouldn't say a model that can't work anymore, but it's probably more inaccurate than we want to. And server-side can be an alternative to this. So let me explain our server-side tagging. Now, as server-side already says, has nothing to do, or only partially something to do with the client side, because the server is this machine on the internet that we also contact when we are requesting our website. Now, what we can do on the internet itself is create another server that runs a software called Google Tag Manager Server Side. And from there, we can send directly data to our different marketing vendors. You might have the question now, well, how is that the user, what does the user do? And then how can I send this over with server-side? There needs to be some kind of connection, and you're right. That's why it's actually called server-side tagging, because we still need to have a request that goes over to our server-side tagging server, and then from there we can distribute to our different tools. But you might already see that this can be quite beneficial because you're only sending one request, which can help your site performance and your site speed actually. Only one request over to your tagging server, and then on that tagging server, we can take that data and distribute it to our different tools. Now, the big advantage of a server-side instance is that we have much more control over what data goes onto these marketing vendors. So if you wanted to redact any kind of information, so for example, if you have an email address in your URL, you could take that out before sending that over to Google Analytics, where the terms of service don't want you to send any PII into personal identifiable information into their systems. We could also enrich the data. So for example, if a user comes and looks at a certain page, we could say, hey, on the server, I know what the site is all about, and therefore I'm going to enrich this with more information, or could send over, like when the user information comes in, I could know, okay, the user has this lifetime value, something that we don't want to always expose on the client side. So again, here we have information that we can enrich, we can change around, we could even ignore it and say like, yeah, this seems to be from a bot, let's just leave that out completely, and overall get better data. The quality can go up and can be cleaner in that sense. So server-side tagging really has some great advantages. You don't only have to send that information from the client side to your tagging server. You could also run a hybrid approach. So you could also send some data over to Google Analytics, some to your tagging server, depending on how you want to set up this up. It's beneficial in some circumstances. But you could also do server-side tracking. That's where server-side tagging and tracking is different. When you have a server sending data to a server for tracking, then it's considered server-side tracking. So this is also possible with our GTM server-side instance, because we could send over data that is not commonly inside of the browser. So for example, when somebody has a reoccurring payment that happens, right? So this the user doesn't go to a thank you page once he has a recurring payment or a subscription payment that is due. It will just be automatic, and maybe Stripe knows about that there is a billing event that happened, and you could send that over to your server side, and then your server side could distribute it to your tools as well. So quite powerful stuff on the server side instance here. Okay, let's go into a little demo here. I have set up Google Tag Manager server side already, and we're going to do a little bit of a case here in terms of what this would look like. All right, to introduce you to our case here, I have a demo shop made up where I have already some tags installed, Google Tag Manager is installed, and it fires a Google Analytics 4 tag to our page view, to Google Analytics 4. It's a page view that should have been tracked. Yes, it's in Google Analytics 4. I just simply set this up inside of Google Tag Manager, and this now sends over data to our Google Analytics 4 instance. So far, so good. Now, this is simply running on the client as you are used to it. How would we transition this over to the server-side instance? Well, we first need to create a server-side instance. So this is already one that I've created, but you could go feasibly ahead and just create a new server-side instance. And down here you have for server-side containers implementation. This is still in beta, but yeah, you can use it already in production. Now, once you create this, you will be asked to deploy a tagging server. What Google Tag Manager does automatically is that you can set this up in the Google Cloud Platform with this GCP platform. This will provision a tagging server that is free to use for you, or within that free tier of use. And it's just for you. It's a little sandbox that you can do everything, set everything up, but they recommend once you go into production, so if there are multiple users hitting this tagging server, then you should upgrade to 3 instances of the App Engine platform, and that will cost you around at least $120 a month. So you need to be aware of this costs when you use Google Tag Manager server side, especially. It's a big step up, obviously, when it comes to Google Tag Manager free versus server side. But you can get started for free by clicking this button. It will take a little bit of time to provision that server. I have already gone ahead and created this for us. And what you can then do is also map your URL. So what that means is that you can choose a URL that you want to use for your tracking needs. By default, it gives you a AppSpot URL, but once you have if you map this to your own URL, that can be really beneficial for the context of first-party, third-party tracking when it comes to cookies, for example. So I would recommend to change this to your URL. In our case, we have a demoshop.measure.school, and in our case, I changed this over to track.measure.school. So this is where the data would go to. And we can now take that information, and I'm going to the workspace, click here on preview for the server-side instance, which will open up our preview mode, and it looks a little bit different here. But what I can do now is simply enter this URL and press enter. And then inside of our preview mode, we see that something arrived here, and it was a incoming HTTP request. We could even do it a little bit more fancy and put in query strings. So let's put test.1, and that information is now available inside of our server-side instance right here. It doesn't do anything yet, but we'll get to this in a second. Now, back to our client here. This is where we want to send data over, and right now we are only sending data over to Google Analytics. Let's actually send data instead of to googleanalytics.com to our tracking server. And to do this is a little setting inside of the Google Analytics 4 tag. There's also one in the Universal Analytics tag where the field to set option needs to be transport underscore URL, and then you input your URL that you want to send your Google Analytics 4 information to. So let's preview this. And back on our page, we would have this now hopefully sent off. We can actually look into our network requests here. I'm just going to reload this again. And well, we would see all of the requests that are going through, but what we are looking for is a collect request. And this collect request now goes to track.measure.school with all the information that would normally be sent over to Google Analytics 4. So inside of our preview mode of our tagging instance, we now see that there was a collect call that came in. And this collect call is now being claimed by something called a client. Now, clients are kind of like parsers, or yeah, I would say parsers and the data layer in one, where it would look at this request here. What is the information that we actually can get from this request? It would claim this request because there's maybe some identifier that says, oh, Google Analytics 4. So for example, in our case, it would be gcollect. Okay, Google Analytics 4 wants to claim this. We can install this kind of client in here. And this is something you do inside of the interface of Google Tag Manager server side. So I have created a client for universal requests and for Google Analytics 4 client requests. And then Google takes that information, or the client takes that information and parses it into a data model. Now, this data model, you can imagine it's kind of like the data layer that would take that information and say, okay, I have read this information. It comes through the path. There is some cookie information. So let me just see here. So the incoming request has all of these request headers. And now the client can take that information and they actually put it into an event model. So this is what this, we need to go here, event data. So puts this into this kind of data layer. And this is information that is now available in your variables. So inside of the tagging server, you can use these information blocks and send them on to your tags. And then you can simply set up your tags again. We have here a Facebook, Google Analytics, and Universal Analytics tag. And you just go here to new and then choose one of these different templates that you have available. I have already installed, this is new, the Facebook Conversion API template, but you could install Universal Analytics, and there are more. Unfortunately, this is not yet as big as Google Tag Manager, as we know it from Google Tag Manager's client side here. So yeah, then you install the tags and you define a trigger. And the trigger can be, okay, when a Google Analytics request comes in, then I want to fire my tags. You can define your triggers depending on your different kind of events that you have set up and your variables that you have set up. So kind of similar like Google Analytics, Google Tag Manager client side here. And then what happens is, and we can see this again in the client request, once the request comes in, we can send outgoing requests and send tags to Google Analytics 4, Google Analytics 4, Google Analytics Universal Analytics, and then also to the Facebook Conversion API. So the Facebook Conversion API, I actually have it here. Let me just reload this. And yeah, we have a page view right here, and there's a manual server setup. So this was sent over from our server rather than a website. So this is working. We also have Universal Analytics. Let me just reload this. Well, let me reload the page itself as well, so we see something coming in. There we go. We have our page view as well. And inside of Google Analytics 4, we should also have our page view. Sometimes Google Analytics 4 doesn't quite show me everything right away. Not sure why it doesn't show me the page view right here. But this way, we have made from one Google Analytics request. So as we saw, there's just one request going over to our tagging server. And now we get data in all of our 3 accounts in Google Analytics 4 and Google Analytics Universal Analytics, and then also in the new Facebook Conversion API. So that is how Google Tag Manager server side works in a nutshell. Obviously, you can do much more in terms of changing your data around, but the system itself looks almost the same from a perspective of your container instance, you would have this client that need to claim the request. So there's a new concept inside of tag managers. You can't just use everything from the client side to use it inside of the server side instance. So I hope that makes sense. And just to let you know about a little bit of the advantages here and the disadvantages. So on the disadvantages, there's some cost involved. Also, debugging is much harder because we can't actually know all of these tools that we might have used in the extensions might not be able to read the request because we are not sending data over directly to Facebook, and the Facebook request actually only happens on our server side. So debugging, it makes it much harder to identify if somebody actually tracks data to Facebook, right? Because it just sends over data to our server side instance, and from there we do all the heavy lifting of sending that data over. It's kind of still a little bit of a manual approach. So you need to be a little bit of technical, and you need to be able to set this up. Most likely right now you need to still use kind of your JavaScript skills to build custom templates. Feasibly, I don't think all of your client-side tagging can be transferred over to the server side just yet. And there's a learning curve involved because there is this new concept of the event model and clients that you have to install and how this data gets passed and then sent over. So the learning curve is for some people more steep depending on which level you go off. But on the positive side, we have much more control over our data. We can do stuff with our data. We can have more flexibility in terms of turning it around and changing things around and making something out of our data. The data quality should go up. This always depends, obviously, how good the data source is in the first place. But when it comes to protections like the ad blockers and so on, that might be something you want to put onto the positive side of Google Tag Manager server side, because you can get around some of these things. The client performance obviously goes up, and browser protections. I already talked about this. So a lot of things for the server side, I would say, but still on the setup side, it kind of, there's cost involved and there's like kind of work there as well. And you have new possibilities. These are just some of them that I come up with, but just to go through them really quickly, we can write HTTP cookies, which is not possible in the client side. We can get around ad blockers. We can redact data. We can rewrite data if we wanted to change something around because it's not quite correct what is in the request, then that might be something that you can do via server side. We can unify the data stream, so we only send one data stream over to the clients, to the tagging server, and from there we distribute everything. We can enrich data through APIs. So just an example, if I would detect somebody's from Austin, Texas, then I would go in and say, okay, what's the weather in Austin, Texas? I could request data from an API and pull that into my request on the server side and enrich my request through the server side without having to build some elaborate JavaScript on the client side and potentially make race conditions worse, and also make things worse that would be waiting for data and also performance. But also I could think of a case where you could, for example, enhance e-commerce tracking, not do it through the data layer, but just send over the page request, and then the page or the tagging server pulls in data from the API saying, on that page you see this product, this is the other products that are on this page, and so on. So feasibly, you wouldn't have to do kind of some elaborate tagging anymore and do data layer implementations, but actually pull this from another source into your tagging deployment. Then we can also now write data directly to BigQuery, which might be interesting for people who say, I want to gather raw data that is not dependent on Google Analytics or on Facebook or so on. I want to gather this raw data and send this over to my BigQuery data warehouse. And we can also contact authenticated endpoints. So this is something we did in the server-side thing with Facebook Conversion API, because there you get actually an API key, and if that user is not authenticated, so the request is not authenticated, we would not be able to send that over, and we don't want to put that into the client side because it's actually something that is quite dangerous to do, because people could steal your endpoint there. Okay, just for a summary here, we talked a lot about the server-side tagging. It's this new technology that you can now send requests directly from a server to your marketing vendors. We talked about Google Tag Manager server-side in particular, which is kind of a tagging solution. And there you just need to, this is set up in the GCP, so the Google Cloud Platform, and you need to install it. And then this also incurs cost, but you have the capabilities of then changing your data around and being more flexible with it. The big part of this is that you can gain more control over the data and kind of have, Simo Ahava calls it a staging site for your data. So you can, before it goes on to the live, to the platforms like Facebook or Google Analytics, you can change that data around and make something out of it, and can build logic into your serving side tagger. So you have much more control over your data. But then also you have some costs that are associated to this instance. It's quite technical right now to set up, so it's not something that you could just do in a few clicks and set up. You also have technical maintenance there, and you need to feasibly also go in and control your data. Because you have more control, you obviously need to control it and see if everything is still correct. Google or the Facebook pixel or Google Analytics page tag or site tag doesn't do all these automatic functionalities. So it's more of a manual approach, I would say, at this point. So just as a summary, should you use this? I would say if you are a small company and or have small clients that just have the Facebook pixel installed in Google Analytics and so on, and use Google Tag Manager maybe already, then that's all fine. You don't have to switch over to server-side tagging. It's definitely something that you should watch and see where's this technology going. If you have a bigger website and you work with bigger clients and you have feasibly somebody that actually knows how to deal with this stuff, or you want to dig into this, then it might be worth it to look into it already and get your client to pay for the server-side instance, because you just can get better data there, and set it up so it makes more sense from your tagging implementation and also from a data quality perspective. So there are some good points there, but obviously you need to talk to the client about the costs, and then also the more time that would go into actually setting this up for the client. So that would be my recommendation right now. It is probably not something that I would be running on every website, because it's just a standard of the internet now. So I hope this makes sense. And yeah, this is from my side. If you have any more questions, then please do contact me. I'm happy to have some conversations about this as well. And back to you, Marcel.
Thank you, Julian. Sorry about that. I think I cut you off maybe a little bit there, but I wanted to appreciate it. Wanted to, obviously thank you again for all of this insight. It is a little technical for sure. I know that's sort of my one thing from this whole thing, but I want all of you to explore Julian's channel if you haven't already. We both work together, helping each other's companies grow, helping our mutual students. We've got students in the Measure Marketing Academy. Julian's got students in Measure Masters. Both are incredible programs. So make sure you check those out as well. And again, thank you, Julian, for being a personal mentor and continuing to help me out with all of this. So what was your one thing from this little adventure? I know my personal one thing is that it's technical, is that maybe my own personal company doesn't need it yet at MeasureMarketing.io. Now, I'm sure eventually we'll get into it. In fact, I know we will, because we're going to be doing a win course on this shortly. Just if I was a regular small business, maybe I wouldn't need it right now. And I think that is probably going to be a one thing for many people, because there is this buzz around GTM Server Side, and everybody thinks they have to jump into it, but they don't realize what it is exactly and the resources that are required to run it. But again, if you've got the resources and it is something that you're ready to look at, maybe it is time for you to take a step toward it. Next week's topic for us is going to be returning to a strategy session edition. So we rotate editions each week, and next week is a strategy session. We're going to be talking about using the Google Analytics for analysis reports. Easy for me to say. So using the Google Analytics for analysis reports will be next week's topic. If you want to make sure you get that, just subscribe to our YouTube channel. And I'll give you a second to do that. Definitely love those who are subscribing. Thank you again for all the comments and questions. We love seeing those and interacting with everybody. And again, I appreciate you sharing the channel as well, because I know many of you have done that because you've let me know. So thank you for that. Now, if you want to know the way to get these workshops, there is the Measurement Marketing Toolbox. This is free. Everything in here is free, and there's actually a bunch more stuff that's back there, something like 40 tools back there now. So Workshop Wednesday, which you get the most current workshop that's back there. Of course, you would also have the YouTube channel, so you still have that. But you get all these other tools: Traffic Tracking Toolkit, Google Analytics Report Card, GTM Cookbook. I'm sure we will create more and more tools as the time goes by, and we put a lot of those back there for you. And it is completely free. So if you like that, it's measure.tips/ww. You just got to create an account for yourself. It's just your name and email, and then it'll set up login details and get them off to you. So I look forward to seeing you in the free level if that's where you currently are. Now, if you want to really level this thing up, I would basically invite you to join the Measurement Marketing Academy. This is our flagship training program. We built the Academy essentially to teach you this stuff, to actually go through the framework and help you to learn all the skills so that you know how to ask some questions, you know what information to look for, you know what actions to take, you know how to structure things, you know how to measure results, you know your traffic, you know how to read reports, you know how to forecast for reports. You learn to optimize so that ultimately, again, we go from marketing in the blind to predictably growing our revenue and profits with the marketing that we're doing. So that is what we teach. A really quick tour. I'm going to show you this very quickly as I move over here. This is the Academy. So when you log in, you have access to these 6 blocks here. Essentially, the Win courses look like this. They are organized in different ways by date because we update them all the time. We have got Google Analytics back here. So you can see these are the ones that we currently have for Google Analytics, including Google Analytics 4 Basics. We've got Google Tag Manager. So this is what we currently have for Google Tag Manager. We actually just recently updated Tag Manager Beyond Basics. And there is a new one in June. We will have Win Google Tag Manager Server Side back here, which we have another instructor, not Julian, unfortunately, but Stockton from one of our measurement marketing. He's part of our measurement mastermind back there, and he's done a ton of stuff. And Stockton and I have worked a lot on this. So, and definitely he's a wizard at this. I love what Stockton's doing. So another guest instructor, Stockton Fisher, is going to be helping us out. Then you've got dashboards and reporting with Data Studio, anything around, learning how to track and measure for funnels or customer journeys, understanding traffic attribution, retention, everything back here. And then there's strategy, courses on strategy. Me personally, I think this is the hard part for a lot of people. It's easy to learn how to set a goal in Google Analytics, let's face it. It is hard to know what a goal should be and what to do with it once you've got it measured. What do you do with all these numbers? How do you actually turn them into something? How do you forecast? Right? There's entire courses back here for that, so you can learn how to use numbers and make good decisions based on those numbers as you go through. So that's just the Win courses. Then, so there's the Win courses there. You've got on-demand workshops. That is where you find things like this week's Workshop Wednesday. So you always have whatever the most recent Workshop Wednesday is. And then for you as an Academy member, all of these will be lit up as an Academy member. These are the same workshops, but they have been edited down. This stuff is kind of taken out, all this little pitchy stuff here. So that's all been taken out. There's been Zoom effects and things like that, what we call student editions of these workshops. Why do we have these here? Because you can search the database. Sometimes there's a workshop that will cover a very specific something or a trendy topic, like when Tag Manager came out with a brand new preview mode and surprised everybody. Well, we don't have time to go and recreate an entire course with the new preview mode because it's huge, right? There's a lot of time, but we can do workshops very quickly and make sure that you are kept up to date. So they're all organized by the 4 editions, the What's New, Getting Started, Beyond Basics, and Strategy session, as well as by date. So you can always come in here and get caught up on the latest and greatest stuff. And of course, like I said, you can search the database, look for goals or whatever the thing is you're trying to find, and you will see all the workshops and lessons in the courses that match that topic to help you get unstuck and on the way there. So that's courses and the workshops that you would have access to all of those. Now you also have access to the Winner Circle. This is a members only community back there. Kind of think of it like a Facebook group, but it's within the members area. So it's where you can reach out to other people. The best part about the Winner Circle is sometimes we're not going to be the best expert. Sometimes somebody will ask us like a technical SEO style question. We don't know those answers. We're measurement people, right? We don't know those technical SEO answers, but there are other members who do. So it's members helping members back here with measurement marketing. We all sort of have that in common, which is fantastic. There's also the toolbox itself. I'm going to show you that. So this is what the toolbox looks like. This is actually what you get as the free member as well. You get access to all of these tools back here, including all of these. But as an Academy member, you get access to this additional section, which is brand new that we are starting to roll out, something called Get It Done Guides. And this is where, a popular report that we create is something called the Eyes on the Journey report, where it shows a kind of a funnel of the conversation that's happening on a page. So we know if the offer page is working or if the cart page is working the way that it's supposed to work. Not technically, but just from a copywriting perspective, from a messaging perspective. So these Eyes on the Journey, this is an example of a Get It Done guide. This is the Eyes on the Journey report Get It Done guide. So it kind of walks you through the basics. It gives you steps. It gives you templates to go through. So you can learn all of your skills in the courses. And then when you know the skills and you want little projects to work on, kind of think about it like this. This is like a craft project, but with measurement. So that's the Get It Done guides. It's a brand new section I'm pretty excited about. And again, only Academy members have access to that. Now, we've covered win courses, on-demand workshops, the toolbox with the Get It Done guides, the winner circle. What if you have questions that are a little more specific or that you don't want to share publicly in the winner circle? That is what Ask an Instructor support is all about. Me personally, that's what I think this is entirely worth. Everything that you pay for the Academy is worth this section right here, because this is kind of like having, in fact, it's exactly like having a consultant on call. So you can click on the button here to ask a question. Pop in whatever your question is, pop in your answer. Love, by the way, when you send us screenshots and videos. So the instructors love that, because it's kind of like if you would virtually call us over and show us kind of what's going on in your workstation on your side of things, and you show us your tag manager setup or you show us your customer journey funnel. We get all sorts of questions that are measurement related back there, whether it's something technical that they're trying to get set up, or maybe even somebody saying, okay, this is what my customer journey looks like. This is what my site looks like. I'm not even sure where to start. What should I do first? So we will help you build your own curriculum and give you the proper trainings, give you some suggestions on which trainings you should take first and why. We will help you with, sometimes it's like, oh yeah, just go ahead and check this little box. And we send back screenshots and videos to you most of the time as well, if you're sending them to us. So, because it's just easier to be able to show somebody what's going on to help you understand how to get unstuck and on the way. So Ask Instructor support is just a fantastic feature. Again, quite literally, it's like having a consultant kind of on call. Now, just so you know, the responses are not real time. It's not a real time chat, but typically within 24 business hours is when you're getting answers back. So know that those are theirs, there. All right. So to recap the Measurement Marketing Academy, again, you get the courses, you get the Ask Instructor support, the on-demand workshop library, and the Winner Circle community, just sort of the main highlights there. When you think about it, you get access to the Academy every month, right? It's a monthly membership, or there's an annual option as well. Every month, that means you get access to every single course. Popular question we get, is it all the courses? Yes, it's all the courses. Does it include the updates? Yes, it includes the updates. How often do we update? Typically, we're doing a new course or an update at least once a month. So we're either producing a new course or we are producing an update to an existing course at least once a month on average. Figure about every 4 to 6 weeks. But you get them all. You never have to worry about it. You just automatically get those. That in and of itself is at least a $3,000 value, right? It's $34.90 at this particular time. Every time we do a new course, if we ever sell them one-on-one, we only sell them for like a couple $100, and there's 20 some odd courses back there. That's how we get that value. So that's the value that you have access to every month. Ask an Instructor support. Again, are there limits to the questions? No. What types of questions can you ask? Anything measurement related, strategy or implementation, tactical, doesn't matter. You can use the Ask Instructor support, and it's unlimited. There are no limits on how many questions you can ask or how often you can use it. That's at least worth $497 to have that consultant on call, somebody that you can ask, send a video over, they send a video back. That's a high level of support. It's way beyond I lost my password kind of support. That's what the Ask Instructor system is all about. So you have access to that. Again, every month you've got access to the on-demand workshop library. True story. When we first started, we would sell these workshops for $20 a piece because people would ask to buy them. So we would sell them for $20 a piece. They are well over 200 some odd workshops now. It's actually well past $4,000 of value that you would, again, have access to just in that section of the Academy. And then, of course, finally, there's the Winner Circle community itself. What's it worth to have access to people who are experts in their own fields, but they all speak your language. They all speak measurement marketing. They all understand what we're trying to do. It's at least worth $97, I would assume. So all of those total total together, that brings us to a total of $8,500 in training and support that you have access to each and every month. Now, that doesn't mean you have to go through all of that in a month. Of course not. But you have access to it all. It's just-in-time learning system with over $8,500 in training and support. That is the Measurement Marketing Academy. If it's something of interest, I would love to invite you to go take a look and learn more about the Academy itself. Now, it's a little less, obviously, than $8,500 per month, so you can go take a look at that. Measure.tips/getacademy is what you type into your browser. So again, just measure.tips/getacademy. It will take you directly to the Measurement Marketing Academy page, so you can learn more about that. And as I mentioned earlier, we have both monthly and annual options available. So look forward to seeing you as an Academy member soon. With that, we'll go ahead and bring this one officially to a close. This has been Beyond Basics, GTM Server Side, and Introduction. Thanks again to you for watching and for Julian for being our guest instructor. Appreciate the help again, Julian, with this one. And we will look forward to seeing you on another workshop soon. Take care.